For nearly 3 years, the Ukraine war has shaped global politics, drained billions of dollars, and kept the world on edge. Now, a surprising statement from Donald Trump is raising one powerful question. Is this war finally coming to an end? According to Trump, 95% of a peace agreement is already done, but the final 5% could decide everything.
The war in Ukraine has never been just a regional conflict. From the very beginning, it reshaped how the United States sees global security, alliances, and its role as a world power. While the fighting happens thousands of miles away, the consequences have been felt deeply inside American politics, economics, and strategic planning. For Washington, Ukraine represents more than a battlefield. It has become a symbol of how far the United States is willing to go to protect the post-World War II international order. Since 2022, the U.S. has provided tens of billions of dollars in military aid, intelligence support, and economic assistance to Kyiv. This level of involvement has not been seen in Europe for decades. American lawmakers have repeatedly framed the war as a test. If Russia succeeds in Ukraine, many in Washington fear it would send a message that borders can be changed by force. That fear extends beyond Europe. U.S. strategists worry that a Russian victory could embolden other powers, especially in Asia, to challenge American influence and international norms. The war has also had a direct impact on U.S. defense policy. Weapon systems once considered secondary suddenly became central again. Artillery shells, air defense systems, drones, and missile stockpiles were depleted faster than expected. This forced the Pentagon to rethink long-term production capacity and exposed weaknesses in America's defense industrial base. Inside the United States, the conflict quickly became a political issue. Support for Ukraine initially enjoyed broad bipartisan backing. Over time, however, questions began to emerge. How long should the U.S. continue funding the war? What is the end goal? And what does victory even look like? American voters started linking the war to domestic priorities. Rising inflation, energy prices, and concerns about government spending made foreign aid a more controversial subject. Some argued that the money sent overseas should instead be used at home. Others countered that preventing wider conflict would save far greater costs in the future. Energy markets were another key factor. The war disrupted global oil and gas supplies, pushing prices higher at critical moments. While the U.S. is a major energy producer, global price swings still affect American households. Gas prices became part of the public conversation, especially during election cycles. The war also strengthened NATO in ways few predicted. Countries that once hesitated to challenge Russia moved closer to the alliance. Finland joined NATO, Sweden followed, and U.S. troops returned to parts of Europe they had left years earlier. For Washington, this reinforced leadership but also increased long-term commitments. As the conflict dragged on, the idea of a negotiated settlement began to gain attention. Military gains became harder, losses mounted, and fatigue set in on all sides. For the U.S., the question slowly shifted from how to help Ukraine fight to how to help the war end without destabilizing global security. This is why any talk of peace, especially claims that a deal is 95% done, immediately captures attention in Washington. Ending the war would not simply stop the fighting, it would redefine U.S. strategy, reshape NATO's future, and influence how America engages with rivals for years to come. Donald Trump's statement that a Ukraine peace deal is 95% done has sparked intense debate. On the surface, it suggests that the most difficult conflict in Europe since World War II may finally be approaching resolution, but in diplomatic terms, percentages can be misleading. Peace negotiations are rarely linear. Agreements are not built evenly, piece by piece. Often, negotiators resolve easier technical issues first while leaving the most sensitive topics for last. These final points, though few in number, usually carry the greatest political and strategic weight. When Trump refers to 95% completion, it likely reflects progress on broad frameworks rather than final commitments.
Issues such as ceasefire mechanisms, monitoring arrangements, humanitarian corridors, and phased implementation may already be outlined. These elements are essential, but they are not what usually derail peace deals. The remaining 5% likely involves the most explosive questions. Territorial control, security guarantees, and long-term military restrictions fall into this category. These are not details that can be easily compromised without major political consequences. Trump's role adds another layer of complexity. Known for bold statements, he often uses strong language to signal momentum and confidence. Supporters see this as effective leadership. Critics argue it oversimplifies reality and creates expectations that may be difficult to meet. From a U.S. political perspective, the claim serves multiple purposes. It presents Trump as a deal-maker capable of resolving conflicts others could not. It also reframes the Ukraine war from an endless struggle into a solvable problem, appealing to voters tired of prolonged foreign involvement. However, experienced diplomats caution that peace deals are fragile until signed and implemented. Even after agreements are announced, breakdowns are common. Mistrust built over years of fighting does not disappear overnight. Another key question is who is involved in the negotiations. Successful peace deals usually require not just the main parties, but also guarantors. For Ukraine, Western security assurances are crucial. For Russia, concerns about NATO expansion and sanctions relief remain central. Trump's statement does not clarify how these concerns are addressed. Is the U.S. offering long-term security commitments? Are sanctions part of the discussion? Without clear answers, the 95% figure remains symbolic rather than definitive. Still, symbolism matters. Markets react to signals, allies adjust their expectations, and adversaries test intentions. Even the suggestion of near-complete agreement can change behavior on the ground, slowing offensives or opening informal communication channels. In Washington, officials are cautious. While hopeful for an end to the conflict, they understand that premature optimism could backfire. A collapsed peace effort could harden positions and make future negotiations even more difficult. Trump's claim, therefore, should be seen as a strategic message rather than a final verdict. It indicates movement but not certainty. The remaining 5%, though small in number, may determine whether peace holds or collapses under pressure. President Volodymyr Zelensky faces one of the most difficult decisions any wartime leader can confront. For Ukraine, peace is not simply about ending violence. It is about survival, sovereignty, and the future identity of the state. From the Ukrainian perspective, unresolved issues are not technical details. They strike at the heart of national existence. Territorial integrity remains the most sensitive subject. Areas occupied during the war carry immense emotional and political weight for Ukrainians. Zelensky has consistently stated that Ukraine cannot accept a peace that permanently surrenders its territory. Any agreement perceived as legitimizing occupation risks domestic backlash and could undermine the legitimacy of the government itself. Another major issue is security guarantees. Ukraine's experience has left deep scars. Past assurances failed to prevent invasion. This time, Kyiv seeks concrete, enforceable protections. Without them, peace could simply become a pause before renewed conflict. For Ukraine, security guarantees may involve long-term Western military support, joint defense mechanisms, or pathways toward formal alliances. Each option carries risks and benefits, and none are easy to secure. Economic reconstruction is also central. The war devastated infrastructure, industry, and housing. Ukraine needs sustained international investment to rebuild. Zelensky must ensure that any peace deal unlocks financial support, not freezes the country in a fragile post-war limbo. Public opinion inside Ukraine is another constraint. Years of sacrifice have hardened attitudes. Many Ukrainians see compromise as betrayal. Zelensky must balance diplomatic reality with public expectations shaped by immense loss. Internationally, Ukraine relies heavily on US and European backing. Any sign that support is weakening could shift Kyiv's negotiating position. Conversely, strong Western commitment strengthens Ukraine's leverage at the table. Zelensky's challenge is navigating between realism and principle. Too rigid a stance could prolong the war. Too flexible a compromise could destabilize Ukraine internally. This is why the final 5% matters so deeply. For Ukraine, it defines whether peace secures the nation or leaves it exposed. Zelensky's decisions will shape Ukraine's trajectory for generations. For Americans, peace in Ukraine would bring tangible and symbolic changes. Financially, it could reduce long-term aid commitments and ease pressure on defense budgets. Energy markets would likely stabilize further. Reduced geopolitical risk often leads to calmer global pricing, benefiting U.S. consumers. Strategically, peace would allow Washington to refocus attention on other priorities, including competition with China and domestic investment. Politically, an end to the war would reshape debates about U.S. leadership. Supporters would claim success in defending global order. Critics would scrutinize the terms closely. NATO's future would also shift. A stabilized Europe could redefine alliance roles and U.S. troop deployments. However, peace would not end all tensions. Implementation, enforcement, and trust building would take years. For Americans, the outcome matters because it defines how the U.S. engages the world, through prolonged conflict or negotiated stability. The last 5% will decide which path emerges.